What's up everybody, how you doing? Welcome to episode 4 of my story, and this episode is called When Things Started to Escalate. Hold on for the ride, enjoy. So at the end of episode 3, we got to the point where I'd just been offered this incredible position as the snow sports community manager for a youth snow sports charity, Snow Camp. And as you can imagine, I was delighted to be offered the position, and it really felt like I'd arrived, and everything in my life at that point had been leading up to this new position that I've been blessed with. And I remember from day one, this energy was just pumping through me about the impact that I could possibly have for this charity, all these different fundraising events and the ways we're going to bring our community together and raise a ton of cash to change the lives of inner city young people with the power of snow sports. It's an amazing position, but throughout January, February, March, April, May, June, my energy and my ideas and the dopamine and adrenaline was just vamping up to another level, and I stopped looking after myself. I wasn't sleeping or eating very well. I just started having all these ideas and thinking, wow, if I can have this impact for the charity, imagine the impact that I could have for the UK, and if I was going to go that far, why not the world? And I've always had this gut sense of that there's so much suffering, unnecessary suffering going on in the world, and I think you guys have got the sense of, it means so much to me to try and ease that suffering, as best as I can with all the time I have on this planet. And that energy and that feeling was just vamping up to another level throughout the first half of 2012, and I couldn't turn off this high, and it was going up and up and up and up, and my foot was getting planted on the accelerator, using the F1 analogy. And everybody was trying to tell me just to slow down, Dan, just try and rest properly and eat well, and I just wasn't. I genuinely felt that spending 2 hours in the kitchen making a nutritious meal was a waste of time, because people are suffering right now and I want to do something about it. And there were periods throughout sort of May and June, early May and June, where I went for basically 3 weeks straight, having 2 hours of sleep a night, and it was ridiculous. I just was not looking after myself whatsoever. So anyway, we booked this holiday to Italy in June 2012, and everybody was saying, Dan, just turn off your phone, just relax, just go out there and switch off. Just go and switch off with my fiance Georgie, who's now my wife. Oh my god, how lucky am I. And so we're flying out to Italy, and at that point, my energy was on a different level, and I started believing I was the next Mark Zuckerberg and the next Steve Jobs. And it wasn't long before I started believing basically that I was the chosen one, and I was sent here to show the world how to slow down and follow their hearts. And so, even at the airport, I was going up to people saying that I wanted them on my team. I was going to change the world, and I wanted them to be a part of it. And when we got to the hotel, it was a really rustic, half-developed hotel, and you could tell that the family were really trying to, put their heart and soul into the place. And by that point, I genuinely believed that I had all the wealth in the world, both in time and money, which of course I didn't have. And so I basically made them a promise that I'd help them develop the rest of the hotel, and I started giving away all my possessions. And I bought a bottle of wine for every single room in this hotel that we were staying with money that I didn't really have. And obviously the alarm bells are going off. So, Georgie calls my family, my mother and her mother, and get this, they start arranging coming out to be with us because something wasn't right. And so, they both start making arrangements to be with us, and the number one priority at that point was to get me to a psychiatric hospital. And at that point I was happy to go along with anything, because I felt like the world was about to change for the better. It didn't matter where I was, I could have an impact from anywhere. So anyway, this specialist psychiatric ward was about an hour and a half's drive away, and I was the only one insured on our little Fiat 500 that we had. And so we're driving along for a good sort of half an hour, and this sense of wanting to help the world right now in the biggest way I possibly could was blowing up, and if I didn't get it out of my system, I was going to explode. So we pull over on the hard shoulder, I scramble out the car, I'm walking down the hard shoulder, basically taking off all my clothes down to my khaki shorts, and I started putting my hands up, for the slow lane, and then the middle lane and the fast lane, and I was stood in my khaki shorts at 5 PM at rush hour in the middle of a major motorway in northern Italy, and I'd stopped the traffic and I backed it up for a good sort of like 5 miles, and I started letting one car go at a time as this massive demonstration to show the world how to slow down and follow their hearts. And the irony is that I was going at 200 miles an hour. How crazy is that? So anyway, I let one car go at a time, and you know, it wasn't long before the ambulance team was there and the police officers, and everybody was like, you know, what's this guy on? You know, has he been smoking anything or drugs? And you know, nobody had the answers. You know, you know, like just people around me, Georgie, they just didn't know what the hell was going on, you know. And for me, I felt like I was on cloud 9. So, you know, I was really trying to convince these police officers that they were going to be my head of security, and you know, the ambulance team, that they were going to be my chief medical officers. And you know, I was just sending it with all this conviction and dopamine, and as you can tell, it's pretty catastrophic and really destructive for anybody around me. So anyway, they pinned me down in the back of the ambulance, and they get me to the hospital, and they strap me down on a bed and start pumping me full of these drugs that would sedate a sumo wrestler, because that's what I needed at the time, just to make me slow down and eat and sleep and eat and sleep. And I was just being pumped full of these drugs, full of them, and it was a really confusing time because I kept waking up and, you know, I had 100% conviction in every atom of my being, and I genuinely believed I was the chosen one. And then I started waking up thinking, well, you know, now what's going on? I'm in this hospital and I'm being pumped full of drugs, you know, and it was really confusing. And you know, obviously there were other people on the ward as well, and you know, I was just like, is this where I'm supposed to be? You know, is this what's going on? And so it was a really confusing time for the 2 weeks that we spent on the ward in Italy. And you know, I had my family with me there the whole time. It was just amazing. So anyway, 2 British nurses fly out from the British Embassy, and they fly me back to the UK, and to get me in a escorted ambulance vehicle again, and get me to the Maudsley Hospital in South London, in Denmark Hill. And it was definitely the best place for me, but I've got to share, it was a pretty horrific experience in the sense that it was a disgusting facility, I've got to say. During the time that I was there, it was pretty dire, and this is supposed to be one of the best mental health institutions in the country. And fortunately, out of the 15 or so staff on that ward, there was one particular male nurse called Dale, and he just treated me like his little brother, you know, and validated that I wasn't crazy and these things can happen to anybody, and he was a true hero. And I just wish I could make contact with him again now, but we're gonna have to see. So anyway, you know, like 2 days before I was discharged, it was clear that I was going to get the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And I've got to share, actually, all my friends and family, like some amazingly close friends and family, came and visited me pretty much every day in the ward as well, which is unbelievable. So anyway, I get discharged, I'm at home, and then the depression starts to kick in, and it was terrible. And I basically spent the back end of 2012 wanting to kill myself. I just didn't want to be here, you know, because I went from having 100% conviction in myself, every atom of my being, to having 0 conviction in myself, and not trusting my thoughts anymore, and not trusting any word that left my lips. And it was hard, guys, it was really hard. And the medication was not quite right, and you know, my mood was fluctuating, and basically I was pinned down to my bed, I couldn't get up. And you know, there were periods for over 6 weeks where, you know, I only got out of bed at about 5 PM just out of guilt, because our housemates were coming home and Georgie was coming home, and I guilt tripped myself into getting up and looking like I at least had some sort of normal day. But you know, the 2 meter walk to the bathroom to brush my teeth was like climbing Everest. It was really tough. It was really tough. But I'm very, very fortunate in that I've got an incredible dream team around me. I've got the world's best family. I've got the world's best mates. and they had my back. And as well as them, I had a true lifesaver with a care coordinator called Grace Parkin, and I've got to tell you, if she wasn't here, I'm not sure I would be here right now saying these words, because she genuinely saved my life through talking. And so twice a week to begin with, and then once a week as the year progressed, I had talking therapy with Grace, and she stopped me from taking my own life. And if you're wondering, I got to the point basically where I'd put my trainers on to go and suss out the place where I was going to take my life. But fortunately I didn't, because of Grace and my family and my amazing friends. But it was a tough time. It was a really tough time. And if I wasn't in a state of limbo, I was in a catastrophic state of depression. And I think I'm going to leave this episode here, because what was to come, as you now know, is a very positive and progressive journey back to the place that you find me in today. And so episode 5, it will be coming to you shortly, and we're going to call that one The Road to Recovery. How does that sound? I love you guys. Thank you for the support, and I'll check back in soon. Lots of love.